was it, 2 ounces of butter, 2 ounces of cooking fat, which was lard, 2 ounces of tea. Milk wasn't on ration, and nor was bread. And of course, I have known ladies in the village that go cycle on a Saturday afternoon to go into the next county and cycle 14 miles on bicycles to go into the next county, into Shaftesbury, to get a bag of buns. Just to, you know, fill up the tummies of those indoors, you know.
Most things like butter and meat were on ration, although vegetables were available. And I cannot remember that we ever had any actual shortage of food. We always had something to eat, although I do remember that during the years that followed, my mother was quite often concerned about how much she could get to feed us.
We were quite lucky because there were farms around, and some of them, well, they always had eggs, and some of them even made their own butter. So occasionally we were lucky and managed to get a little bit of extra butter, a few eggs.
We didn't starve, but most people, if they had gardens, tried to grow veg, and sometimes you swapped potatoes or something for chicken, or because the lady next door to us kept chickens, and you were allowed to supply your neighbour with eggs and sometimes give them a chicken to help with the food.
In the 1930s, there was a lot of unemployment in Britain, particularly in the north, and consequently there was a lot of malnutrition. And as a result of the war and the rationing, I think people were healthier at the end of the war than they were at the beginning. And of course, the people in the Ministry of Food, as it there was, they worked out the sort of thing that you should eat, and the rations were allocated accordingly. And you never heard anything about obesity like you do these days. And since the rations were just adequate, and they were allocated to every person, because of the people who were malnourished were now getting something, the average across the population, I think, was much better in 1945 than it was in 1939.
And with regard to rationing and food, when I went to senior school, we had school lunches, but when the evacuees were with us, we all sat round the same dining table, and you had your 2 ounces of butter beside you, so that we didn't eat their ration of food, you see.
Today, when I see so much food thrown away, you know, it saddens me really in a way, because I think, you know, all those poor people in the war that never had anything, you know. And I suppose we were lucky really in a way in this country. There were people that were in France and places like that, in Holland, they didn't have as much as we had. So, you know, so.
We had a lady of about 60 with her daughter, and her daughter worked on the Hurricane, but because her mother was elderly, she stayed at home. So that was nice for me, because when I came home from school, there was somebody there. And when we got dried fruit on ration, she used to make bread pudding, and when I got home, would you like a nice piece of bread pudding? And that was nice for me.
I remember trying to help my mother one day with spreading butter on the bread, and I was spreading it very, very thinly, and I got reprimanded for making it too thin. So we had adequate, in my opinion, but it was not generous.
All women's magazines offer hints, and women have used more ingenuity over their clothes than ever before. They simply have to, with only 24 coupons to spend every 6 months.
It's a funny old business, that war and that rationing, that food rationing. But there was a lot of black market went on. You said black market, what they call the black market, you know, where people were. I remember, oh, this is a funny one, this is. There was a lady, her name was Sharp. They were butchers at Heytesbury. And I was only a young lad, I was about 14, I suppose 15. And she came down just one Sunday evening, down to, she knew my mother, but she lived at Heytesbury. She came down and she says, "Is your boys around?" My mum said, "Yeah, they were at the back." She said, "Well, could they come and mend a puncture for me?" I went up there, so up the road, she's up about a quarter of a mile up the road. I went up there, and so there it was, a back tire was punctured. Could I repair it? Well, yeah, but I said, "Well, haven't we got a spare wheel?" Well, I said, "You must have a spare wheel." And it was funny, really. She wanted me to repair this wheel, this tire, with a puncture outfit. Although she had a spare wheel, but the spare wheel was underneath a dead calf, which was in the back of the car. But she didn't want me to see the calf. But in the end, we had to take the calf out and lay it on the side of the bank. I said, "Well, I can't repair it." So we had to get access to the spare wheel and change the wheels over and then put the calf back in. Never said a word, didn't say a word about the calf, but, but she didn't want me to see it, really. And she bought this calf, black market, off of some farmer, I guess, you know. I mean, there was petrol being planted in hedges and all sorts of things like that, you know. They used to get planted petrol in cans, and I mean, petrol was on ration, you see. There was what they call private petrol and commercial petrol. Commercial petrol was dyed, had a red dye put in it, in the petrol. You could get plenty of commercial petrol, but to use it, you had to have a commercial license, you see. But my dad, being what he was, he had a commercial license, so we could get plenty of petrol, but there were other poor people that only had a car that was private, taxed private, so they would only get about a gallon a month, 1 gallon a month. What we could do with 1 gallon a month? You couldn't go very far with that, could you? I don't know, I'm not a chemist, but people were doing all sorts of things to take the dye out of the petrol. They were putting it through all sorts of stuff, charcoal and all sorts of stuff. I even believe they were putting aspirins. What that did to it, I don't know, but these aspirins took the dye out of the petrol, but whether it did or not, I don't know. But I never tried it myself, but I know people did try getting the dye out of fuel, you know. Of course, the thing was, you see, especially with a motorcycle, you know if somebody was riding a motorcycle on dyed petrol, because when you tickle the old carburetor, petrol would flow over, and then it would dry out, but you leave a red dye on the float chamber. So policemen come along, you know whether you had red petrol in the tank or not without looking in there, you know. So there's a lot of clean carburetors around. The metal polish used to come out every day to clean the dye off the float chamber, you know. They were brilliant. These float chambers like that kettle back there, you know, they were aluminium, of course, anvil carburetors, but yeah.